Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. So we've seen in the news recently there's been a lot of tension between Israel and Iran. We saw recently that Iran shot a missile from Syria and aimed it at Dimona, which is Israel's nuclear reactor, which is a huge red line for Israel. Israel responded by, I think, some attacks on the missile launching bases in Syria, and then I think Israel attacked one of the Iranian tankers, some kind of drone attack. There's been a lot of back and forth tension, and then Iranian proxies with Hamas and their other proxies in Gaza have been firing missiles, and there's been a lot of more attacks and tension in Israel. So we see a tremendous amount of tension growing between Israel and Iran. What's interesting is there's a lot of sources in the Torah that indicate before the coming of Mashiach, which hopefully we're close to, there's actually going to be some kind of major war between what the Torah calls Edom, which means like the inheritance of the Roman Empire, which would be like America, USA, and the powerful nations in Europe would be what the Torah is calling Edom, versus Paras, which is Persia, which is Iran. So this great war it talks about between Edom and Persia. And there's a source in the Zohar Kodesh, that says there's going to be these three wars between the children of Edom, Esau's children, and the children of Ishmael, of the Arab nations. And there's going to be these three great wars. And it does seem that we're getting closer to this period, and we're in this period. So it's fascinating because it seems like these sources are saying that even though there's this tension between Israel and Iran, there's really going to be a war between probably America and Iran. And we see a growing tension there. And like under the Trump administration, they took out this terrorist leader Soleimani, and then there's been some Iranian reprisals, and they've been attacking ships in the Gulf and in the Strait of Hormuz, and recently I think there's been a lot of incidents with Iranian ships coming close to the American ships, and the American ships, I think there was an article, they just had to fire warning shots at the Iranian ships. We saw during the Obama administration that the Iranians actually captured some American soldiers or sailors for a bit. Right, so it seems it would seem like with the Biden administration, they're trying to revive this, this deal, this nuclear deal, whatever. I mean, it was a strange deal because the Obama administration, they had a sunset clause where I think they were wasn't stopping Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. It was like a 10-year sunset clause that I think legally after 10 years so I think it was 2015. So in 2025, which we're heading to, they would legally be able to have nuclear weapons according to that deal. They're saying it's stopping them, but it's actually giving them the nuclear weapons free and clear, and then giving them all kinds of billions of cash to fund their terrorist proxy wars. So it would seem unlikely that the Obama administration, the Biden administration, which is carryover from the Obama administration, it would seem unlikely that they're looking to get in a war with Iran, but there may be events spinning out of control, and according to the Torah, that's where maybe the war is going to lie. So it's interesting. So in the Gemara of Yoma, which is about Yom Kippurim, it talks about this fascinating question of who would win this war between Edom and Paras, and I think this would mean between America and Iran. So it says the Gemara asks the question. It says Amar Rebbe Yeshua ben Levi. So Amar Rebbe says in the future that Rome will fall into the hands of Persia. So it starts out, this little sugya starts out that here, like America, which is the modern Rome, would actually fall into the hands of Persia. So they would lose. So that's kind of shocking because America is more dominant superpower than Iran. So it quotes a pasuk from, I think, Sefer Daniel, from Daniel. It says, L'chein shamu atzas Hashem asher ya'atz Edom. So it's therefore, you've heard the counsel that Hashem has devised against Edom, meaning like America and Europe. Umach shevosav asher chashav yoshvei seiman. And then his thoughts, like Hashem's thoughts, upon the people living in Taman, which is Yemen. And that's also fascinating. So Yemen here would be like the children of Ishmael, would be the Arab nations. And even in Yemen, we see this tension between the Houthis that I think are a proxy of Iran. They're fighting against the government there that's backed by Saudi Arabia and America. So you see more tension there. And I think there was a lot of drone strikes that started under the Obama administration. So there's been a lot of fighting in Taiman. It's interesting that Sefer Daniel refers to that, but it's meaning the the battle between Persia, basically Iran, and America in this case. So ve'im lo yischavu chavum yischavum se'ire hatzon, and the youngest of the flock will be dragged off. So that's where the question, who's the youngest of the flock? So Yishmael was born a generation before Esav. So Yishmael, his descendants become the Arab nations, and Esav, his descendants, go on to found the Roman Empire, which is now, the powers of Europe and America. So technically, Edom could be the youngest. So who's the youngest of the flock? So that's where the confusion is, who will win this war. Shvim lo yashim Alehem nevehem, and they won't be able to live in their dwelling. So someone's going to be destroyed here. So either America is going to defeat Iran, or Iran's going to defeat America. So Maskif la Rabba Bar Ula. So he asks a question on this. So he's my mashme dehai tzire atzon. So he's saying, who is the youngest of the flock? Is it Edom? Is it America? Is it Paras? Is it Iran? Who is it? So he answers that it's Parasu. That's really Persia. Persia is the youngest. So why is Persia the youngest? There's a pasuk here. Let's see. This pasuk's in Daniel again, and he says, "Ha'ayo asher Isa ba'al ha'karanayim." That there was this ram that I saw, that you saw in this prophetic vision. He's talking about Daniel. Daniel, he saw this ram in this prophetic vision, and it's the master of horns. It's the horn master. Malche Madayu Paras, meaning the kings of Media and Persia. So Ve'ema Yavan, but wasn't it talking about Greece, the Greek Empire? Because it says Diksi V'Hatzafir V'Hasair Melech Yavan, that this he-goat is really the king of Greece, meaning it was referring to Alexander the Great. So Kisalik Rav Chaviva Bar Sormaki. So when Rav Chaviva Bar Sormaki he left, he said before the Rabbanan, before the rabbis, he said, Amarle, he says, Mandalo Yada Perushe Karaye Mosiv to Yuvta Le Rebbe. That who is it that doesn't know the explanations of these pasukim, these verses, that they raise a challenge to Rebbe's interpretation, right? And Rebbe's interpretation, I think, is that Rome is going to fall into the hands, meaning America would fall into the hands of Iran, but they're challenging this. They're saying, no, really it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be Iran that falls into the hands of America, meaning America would win a war against Iran. And then he says, so my Se'ire Hatzon, who is this youngest of the flock? And his explanation here is Zutra Diachohi, that it's the youngest of brothers. The flock meaning brothers, a family. And so Esav, so Edom, so America and Europe, they're really the younger brother than Yishmael and the Arab nations, who was born a generation before Esav. So the Tane Rav Yosef, Tiras Zeh Paras. And he brings proof that Tiras is talking about Persia. And it says, Amar Rabba Bar Barchana, Amar Rebbe Yochanan, Mishum Rebbe Yehuda, ben Rebbe Eli. So he says, Asida Romi Shetipo B'Yad Paras. So he also agrees in the future Rome's going to fall into the hands of Persia. So Kol V'chomer, Uma Mikdash Rishon Shibenauhu B'nei Shem V'hecherivuhu Kasdim. So he's bringing a proof. He's saying just as the first temple was built by the children of Shem, meaning the Jewish people built the first temple during the days of Shlomo HaMelech, during the days of King Solomon, that it was destroyed by the Babylonians, and the Babylonians then fell, and they were defeated by the Persian Empire. So then he says the Mikdash Sheni, the second temple, Shibenauhu Parsiyim, that the Persians built the second temple. What does that mean? It means Queen Esther and Achashverosh, they had a son Daryavesh, they had a son Darius, and he allowed the Jewish people to rebuild the second temple, the Hecherivuhu Romiyim, but then it was destroyed by the Romans. So the second temple was destroyed by the Romans. So Eno Din Sheyiplu Romiyim B'Yad Parsim. So once again, this should be proof that the Persians, meaning the Iranians, should defeat the Romans, meaning America, because the Persians allowed the building of the second temple, where the Romans destroyed the second temple. So it would seem that then the children of Edom would be deserving of being defeated. So Amar Rav, but he says, Rav has a different explanation. He says, Asida para shetifo biyad Rami. He says, no, in the future, um, Paras, meaning Persia, Iran, will fall into the hands of Rome, will fall into the hands of America, and so the USA would win the war against Iran. So Amru Le, Rav Kahana, Rav Asi, Larav. So Banoye Biyad Sasore. So it says like he can't believe it. It's like how can the builders of the temple, how can the Iranians, the Persians, who allowed the second temple to be built, how can it possibly be that they would be falling into the hands of the destroyers of the second temple, meaning the Romans, who destroyed the second temple, and the Romans now in the modern world is all the descendants of the Roman Empire. So this is all the nations, the powerful nations of Europe and America. So they've taken on the philosophy of Rome, and they're now modern Rome. So how can it be that the builders fall into the hands of the destroyers? So they can't believe it. So this is his answer. So he says, Amarlahu, he says, Ain, no, he says it's true. He says, yes. Gezeras Melachi, meaning this is the decree of the king. So this is the decree of Hashem. So it's not that this is the way it should be. It shouldn't be that the destroyers of the temple should fall into the hands of the destroyers. It shouldn't be that the descendants of the Persian Empire and Iran should possibly lose a war to America, who are the descendants of the Romans who destroyed the temple. It shouldn't be that. But this is the decree that Hashem has said. So Ika da Amre, so that those that say, so in kunami ha kasasre be kanista, there are those that say that they're destroyers of like the shuls, the synagogues. So Tanya Nami Haki. So there's also a Baraisa that teaches Asida Parash Yatipo Biyad Rami, that in the future, Paras, Persia, Iran will fall into the hands of Rome, will fall into the hands of America. So Chad Desasre Be Kanista, and this one who destroyed the synagogues. So Va'od Gezeres Melech Hu Sheyiflu Bonin Biyad Sosrim. But there's a decree from Hashem that this is what's going to happen, that the builders, meaning Persia, Iran, will fall into the hands of the destroyers, of the descendants of the Roman Empire, being in this case America, and that's just the way Hashem decreed it. So then the final part of this debate between the war between America and Iran, it talks about the coming of Mashiach. So let's see what it says here. So it says, Diamar Rav Yehuda Mar Rav. So Ein ben David Bo Ad Shetif Shot Malchus Rome Harasha. B'kol halam kulo tisha chodashi. So it says, Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, he says, Ben David won't come, meaning Mashiach ben David. He won't come until the Roman Empire, until the kingdom of Rome stretches out across the whole world for 9 months. And this is called the Chevle Mashiach. This is called the birth pangs of Mashiach. So according to this, it would mean that if America defeats Iran in a war, America would be the all-powerful superpower. They would control basically the world supply of oil. They'll be all-powerful. No one could stand against them. And they would rule the entire world for 9 months after that war of the U.S. defeating Iran. And that's basically the final conclusion of the whole debate, is that in the end, it would be Edom that defeats Paras, beats Persia, so it would be the U.S. defeating Iran in this war. So, I mean, we'll have to keep following the news. We'll have to keep seeing what happens. I mean, war is a horrible thing. Like, we don't really want war, but we've just been given these kind of like signposts in the Torah that's telling us this is going to happen very close to the coming Mashiach. So, we don't want war. We definitely want Mashiach. We'll just have to see what happens, and I don't know. B'ezrat Hashem, everything will be for the best. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah. Thank you.